2 of my clients die every day, but it's so gratifying to be able to help so many people. Look, when you and I represented people in car accidents, it felt great to make sure that you helped that one person. And when we tried that case, that one client was the most important client in the world.
Law school taught you the law, but it didn't teach you this, how to connect. Be that one lawyer who shows up different, the one clients trust, the one they never forget. I'm Neal Goldstein, and this is That One Lawyer Podcast. Let's get started. Today's guest is one of the fiercest advocates for everyday heroes you've probably never heard of, but you should. Michael Barasch is the managing partner of Barasch McGarry in New York, widely known as the lawyer for the 9/11 community. Over the past 2 decades, Michael and his team have recovered over $3 billion for sick and injured responders, survivors, and their families. But more than that, they've helped secure lifetime health care and justice for people who ran toward danger when the rest of the world ran away. Well, he fought in courtrooms, in Congress, and even against financial predators who tried to exploit his clients. And he's done it all while building a firm grounded in empathy, integrity, and purpose. This is the story of how a self-described reluctant lawyer became a relentless force for good, and what we can all learn about leadership, grief, resilience, and doing the hard thing when no one's looking. Michael, welcome to That One Lawyer Podcast.
Neal, thank you so much. I wish I had written all that. It's so nice. I got to play that for my mom.
Is your mom still around?
Yeah, she's 94. She's doing great. She's an art historian who still lectures. It's amazing.
Wow.
And that just goes to show you, look at you at your advanced age.
Yes,
You're
I know.
still working. You got to stay mentally, involved in stuff. Otherwise, you just wither and die.
Well, when you get to my age, probably in another 25 years for you, you'll be able to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So full disclosure to everybody, Michael and I shared the 18th floor of 11 Park Place in Lower Manhattan, and we became good friends, and he was an easy guy to communicate with. We did some work together, and of course, we were around together on the day of 9/11. So before we get to that, can you tell us a little bit of your backstory, Mike?
Sure. So you were right when you said I was a reluctant lawyer. I was a history major in college, and I didn't want to be a history teacher. And my father said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, I don't know. I want to work with you, Dad. You're in the insurance business. It was the only thing I knew. We didn't know any investment bankers. We didn't know, my dad and mom weren't friendly with doctors. So it was just, I want to be in the insurance business. And he said, that's okay. But first, I want you to go to law school because get your background and then you'll come work for me. So I said, okay. And I hated law school because I knew I didn't want to be a lawyer. So I figured, all right, I just got to pass. And I was the world's worst law student. And but I did pass. I eventually passed the bar, not the first time, but the second time. And I was going to work for my dad. And he said, why don't you work for my friend Larry as a lawyer for 1 year? Just see what it's like to be a practical lawyer. And then you'll come into the insurance business. And I said, yeah, that kind of makes sense. The worst thing would have been to send me to the library. But this guy, Larry, had me go to court with him every day. I never went to the library. So all I did was second seat him. And I'd go get him the New York Post. And then it was during the gas crisis. I had to fill his car up with gas. And I couldn't believe it. I was getting paid to fill up this guy's convertible with gas while I read the New York Post. It was like, this is great. And then I got bit by the trial bug because he'd send me up to the Bronx to interview a witness. And he said, if the witness is going to be good, bring her back. So I would talk to the witness, kind of explain what the situation was and why we needed her, brought her to the courtroom, listened to the testimony, brought her back. And I really thought, God, this seems fun. So eventually Larry started having me try all these $10,000 taxi cases. You remember, Neal, when the law was that a taxi only had to have $10,000 of insurance? So I really couldn't screw it up too badly. And I didn't know anything about trying cases, but I learned from my adversaries. And somebody during jury selection would say something, and I'd think, wow, that was really clever. And then I'd steal it for the next time I had to pick a jury. And then sometimes the the defense attorneys wanted to go to trial, but they didn't really want to go to trial. They just wanted to bill some days. So we'd pick a jury for 2 days. Then we'd have to wait for a judge. Then we'd be assigned to a judge and open up, and then the case would settle. And I thought, wow, I'm settling a $10,000 case for $9,000, saving the defendants $1,000. My client gets $9,000. My boss gets a fee. Everybody was happy. But every time I heard the other lawyers say something clever during openings, I'd steal it for my next trial. Eventually, he let me try bigger cases and then bigger cases, and I started to have some success trying cases, and it was so much fun that I never went into my father's insurance business. And I worked for that law firm, Rosenberg and Horowitz, for 7 years, and then finally I realized it's a family firm. They're never going to let me be a partner, so I started my own practice, and then eventually I hooked up with Jim McGarry, who was a guy I knew from Fordham Law School, and Jim was representing New York City firefighters. And he didn't try cases. I did try cases. So it made for a nice match. And for years, we started to try cases, and people love firefighters. They're great clients to represent. And then 9/11 happened. So now I'll let you ask me another question.
Okay, well, first, everybody should see firsthand, here's a person who wanted to go into something completely different, majored in history, wanted to go into his father's insurance business, and somehow things evolved and turned into something completely different, which he fell in love with. And I think it's a great backstory, Mike. And I'm sure there's a good part of the population that is quite glad that you made that decision. On 9/11, as I said earlier, we were both in the building. Our office was 3 blocks, I think, from ground zero. What do you remember most about the days after 9/11? I mean, how did that somehow redefine your purpose?
So first of all, yeah, I was here. The thing I remember most about 9/11 were the people jumping out of the building. That will stay with me forever. And then I remember my wife calling me. I told everyone, get out, we're at war. But I was transfixed from, you remember Don Penson's office in the
Sure.
corner? It was actually
Sure.
Jim McGarry's office at the time. And I was staring, not understanding it. You couldn't grasp what I was saying. Why are people jumping? Why don't they just go to the roof? Why don't they just run downstairs? Not realizing that the planes had taken out the elevators and the stairwells. And of course, my wife calls me up and says, get out of there. And I said, they're not going to attack 11 Park Place.
Let me just intervene for a second. When I was sitting in my office, which the window was facing the Hudson River, and all of a sudden something came by the corner of my eye that looked pretty big. And within 5 seconds, I heard boom. And then I saw a bunch of construction workers basically looking south. And then I went into Mark Chalfin. Remember Mark Chalfin?
Sure.
He had the perfect view of the Trade Center, opened up the blind, and I said, holy shit, what is going on? Called my wife, turned on the radio, wasn't even on the radio yet.
Right. And by the way, Neal, I am now standing in your old office. Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah. Well, we took over your space when you moved to Long Island.
Right.
And then we took over the 17th floor and then the 9th floor and then parts of 8 and 7.
Yes. So I interrupted you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So anyway, so you asked me what I remember about that day and then the months that followed. Well, remember, so we had no electricity in this building until the early part of October. Right. So if I wanted to come back, Lefty, the super, would let me walk up the stairs, or that was the only way to get our diaries. And then we were meeting at Chinese restaurants in Midtown because the cops were not allowing people south of Canal Street, then south of Chambers Street. But those were my early memories. And then finally you get an armed guard, an armed cop to walk you to the building. You remember the way tanks parked on Park Place. For your listeners, this must be like ancient history. Really? In America? There were tanks parked on Park Place? Yeah, because nobody knew if there was going to be another attack or what was going to go on. Well, eventually they told us, they told us 5 days after 9/11, the air is safe to breathe. You can come back to school. You can go back to your homes. We wanted to reopen Wall Street, which they did the following week. So my office, my staff and I, and we were only 15 people at the time, we would, since we couldn't come to the office, we'd go to firehouses and visit people. And the women in my office were making plates of lasagna, like so many thousands of other New Yorkers. And I kept hearing all these people coughing. And I said, what is that? And they said, we don't know. That you can smell it still. The buildings were on fire for 99 days. And they called it the World Trade Center cough. And that's what the Bureau of Health Services at the FDNY called it, because they didn't know what else it was. So eventually, in early October, we all came back to work. I think it was October 9th, and you did too. And then I realized, wait a second, it's one thing for lawyers to have asthma, but if you're a firefighter, you can lose your career if you have asthma. So I was concerned about that. So we filed something called notices of claim against the city for its failure to give respiratory protection to all these firefighters and cops. Now, I didn't want to sue the city of New York. I mean, I'm a New Yorker, and I know this was the terrorists who did this, not the city of New York. On the other hand, I felt I had an obligation to protect these guys in case that cough didn't get better. And of course, the press killed me. New Yorker sues the city of New York. It wasn't, as you know, Neal, a notice of claim is not a lawsuit, but it preserves somebody's right to bring a lawsuit a year from then if their injury doesn't get better. So I did that. And now I want to speak to something, because I don't know who your audience is, but just how, if it's a relatively young audience, I want to talk for a minute about what I call luck and how important luck is to your career. Yes, you can go to the best law school and get great grades, but at the end of the day, it's who you meet and the relationship you develop, not what you know. Although what you know is important, and that resume is important, I have found that who I have met has been more important. So first of all, I graduated from Fordham Law School in 1980. It was 1982 that I accidentally and luckily ran into Jim McGarry at Times Square subway station. Hadn't seen him in 12 years. And when I said, Jim, how you doing? Like if I said to you, Neal, how you doing, buddy? What's going on? I haven't seen you in so long. What's the answer?
Doing well. How are you?
Exactly. Everybody instinctually says, I'm doing well. Not Jim McGarry. Jim said, I hate my job.
Yeah.
I'm at this big white shoe law firm, and I represent all these buddies of mine from Queens who are New York City firefighters, and they have injuries, and my firm wants me to charge them by the hour. Well, these guys don't have money to pay what this law firm wants me to charge them per hour. I don't know what I'm going to do. Now, how many people would be honest enough to say that?
Right.
And I said,
not lawyers. Yeah.
And I said, I'm a personal injury lawyer. I've never charged by the hour.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I only charge a contingency. Why don't we get together and talk? And that led to the creation of my firm called Barasch McGarry, just by luckily running into him and him being open enough and honest enough to tell me that he wasn't happy. Now fast forward, it's Christmas vacation of 2001. 99 days after the attacks. And I'm watching the New York Giants play the Redskins at the hotel bar in Jamaica in the Caribbean. My family's by the pool. They don't understand what it's like to be a Giant fan.
Right.
They just are crazed. You got to watch the game. And these three kids were from Washington and were giving each other, razzing each other. And I said, what do you do? What do you do? And It turns out they were the three children of Ken Feinberg, who had just been appointed special master by President Bush of the first Victim Compensation Fund. How lucky is that? So I told them what I do. They said, would you like us to introduce you to our dad? Duh. So I call up my secretary, Barbara. I said, fax me. There was no email then.
Right.
Fax me the air sample reports, some medical records. I'm meeting Ken Feinberg tomorrow for breakfast. And on Christmas morning of 2001, I meet Ken Feinberg. I show him all these records. And he said, why don't you bring all your guys to the Victim Compensation Fund? And I said, I can't, because your rules say you had to go see a doctor within 72 hours of 9/11. And I can tell you, Mr. Feinberg, no firefighter was going to get off the pile because he had a cough to go to a doctor while there was still a chance that they could find some of the 343 firefighters who were missing. So he said, come see me in New York when you get back. If you're willing to drop your notice of claims against the city, which was his dictum from Congress.
Right.
No lawsuits. You had to waive your right to sue.
Right.
But then you didn't have to have an adversarial proceeding.
Right.
You would get paid for your illness.
Right.
So, Mr. Feinberg, I always say this, the most important man in my professional life. We met in January. I showed up with 3 firefighters and a pulmonologist, and he changed the rules, allowing for latent illnesses to be awarded to people who were exposed to the toxins. So, again, luck that I ran into his 3 kids. Now, yeah, you can say I made something of that luck. I made something of my luck meeting Jim McGarry, but you got to recognize the luck and then do something with it.
Well, and you're well said, really well said. And here's the thing that we talk about all the time here, and that is it's not about what law school you went to or how much you know. Yes, is it important to be competent? You and I both agree. You have to be somewhat competent. But here's the thing. You have to be ready to have conversations with people. You had conversations with some kids sitting at the bar. Look what that did for you. Look what that
Right.
did for you. You talk to strangers. I always say that that's really important to do. And
Oh,
so your relationship, and we'll get more into that because I know that's a part and maybe a major part of your success and your firm's success is the relationships you have.
yeah.
What I wanted to ask you was, I believe, and I read that a good part of your heart was put into this, into the 9/11 project for your firm because of several people, 2 people that worked for you, one of whom I knew passed away,
Yeah.
and also a detective that you met.
Yeah.
And
So,
would you mind just telling us a little bit about that?
again, just by dumb luck, one of my original clients was Detective Jimmy Zadroga. And Jimmy died at the age of 34 of pulmonary fibrosis. But a little background. When Congress first created the Victim Compensation Fund, they only created it for 2 years. It ended at the end of December 2023 because they really thought it's just for the people who died. So we have to give the widows and the families time to grieve, make a claim, understand what it means to waive your future legal rights. They'll get paid, and then that'll be the end of it. But nobody envisioned these guys would keep getting sick. So the first victim fund ended, but my clients kept getting sick. And now so many of them who were firefighters were losing their careers because, as I said, you and I could be lawyers with asthma, but you lose your career as a firefighter with asthma.
Sure.
So these were significant claims, and these guys had no recourse. And the city was pushing back against firefighters and cops, saying, "Oh, come on, you've been fighting your whole career going into fires, or you're a smoker. That's not caused by the World Trade Center." Well, Jimmy Zadroga was 34 years old. He had pulmonary fibrosis. He was an NYP detective, and he died in 2006. They did an autopsy, and in his lung tissue, they found ground glass, asbestos, chromium, lead, benzene, all of these known carcinogens. So using that medical evidence, and now we had all these guys with pulmonary illnesses. Well, we lobbied and we finally got Congress in 2010 to reopen the Victim Compensation Fund when they created the Zadroga Health and Compensation Act, which created the World Trade Center Health Program and reopened the Victim Compensation Fund for 5 years. But then people didn't stop getting didn't stop getting sick, and now we saw people were getting cancer, and we had enough evidence to have doctors at NIOSH link. And today, by the way, it's 69 cancers that have been linked to the World Trade Center toxins and all these respiratory illnesses. So I kind of became an unofficial lobbyist, although I call myself an advocate, not a lobbyist. And we got Congress to extend it again in 2016. There were some exciting moments when the new special master, Sheila Birnbaum, and then Rupa Bhattacharya, they said, we don't have enough money here with all these people getting sick, so we're now only going to pay people half of what other people got. Well, that created a huge outcry how unfair this is, and that really helped us. And thank you, Jon Stewart and the unions and John Field and the Feel Good Foundation. We were marching on Washington. All the politicians loved it when firefighters would show up in their uniform and we'd take pictures with the politicians. And we finally got enough people in Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, to support the permanent extension of both programs in 2019.
So, I mean, you talk about Congress, and I know everybody knows about Jon Stewart, but you lobbied over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And you talked to so many politicians. I'm just curious. That was not something you were used to. That's
Yeah.
not what you did as a personal injury lawyer. So
Yeah.
here you were not only helping individual first responders recover compensation for what they were going through, but you were making actually a larger impact on the mass, on the greater good of humanity.
Well, I had a great cause, Neil. I mean, come on, who doesn't love firefighters? And I had this evil government. It was evil on 5 days after 9/11 when Christine Todd Whitman said, the air is safe to breathe. Let's reopen Wall Street. Come back to school. Come
Right.
back to your jobs.
Right.
Come back to your Battery Park, to your apartments. Well, you know what? It really was a great cause because I had our own government lying to us. But
Right.
then Congress did the right thing,
Right.
saying, okay, we're going to create this law and take care of you. And they did. But unfortunately, if you've seen what I've been doing lately, I'm back in Washington a lot because Mr. cut the health program 20%. Well, there was such a huge outcry, bipartisan, that the president overruled him. And remember, it was Trump who signed this permanent extension in 2019. So you got to know, if he understood what was going on with all these cuts, he wouldn't have let Musk do it. Or at least I hope he wouldn't have. But then what does Musk do? He does away with NIOSH and fires 16 of the doctors from the World Trade Center Health Program. Again, another bipartisan push back. We were down in Washington, and fortunately, they reversed those firings. We don't know for how long. So I'm going back to Washington next week to fight. We need more funding and once and for all, enough funding for the health program. Fortunately, the Victim Compensation Fund has plenty of money because it gets its money from taxes on foreign corporations, but we don't have enough money for our health program. So we're going to fight for that. And why are we fighting? Because I take it personally. As you said earlier, Liana Rivera, who you knew, died of breast cancer. She was one of my secretaries. Dennis Cotter was one of my paralegals. He died of kidney cancer. I am a prostate cancer survivor. My secretary, Barbara, has lymphoma. My partner, Barry Salzman, has skin cancer. So if we have it in our office because we return to work, so does everybody else in Lower Manhattan, or they will get it. I mean, everybody feels like a ticking time bomb, Neil. So, but as sad as it is that so many people are getting sick and dying, I mean, I lose 2 clients a day to 9/11 illnesses. I mean, it's horrifying.
Well,
on the other hand, incredibly grateful to be able to tell someone who's got a diagnosis that's terminal, sir, I assure you, your wife and kids won't lose the house.
Yeah.
Your kids can go to college. So it's so interesting. We talk about our careers. I've had so many different careers. Look at you now, Neil. You're doing this podcast. It's new. It's different. It's exciting. For me, I was a personal injury. I was an ambulance chaser.
Right.
For the first 7 years of my career, doing taxi cases. Then, I did firefighter cases. Then 9/11 happened. I started representing those people. Then I became a lobbyist / advocate.
Right.
Then I became, trying to change the rules and get the new special masters to make rules that were fairer. Now I'm lobbying again. I just feel like I've always been doing different things, and that's why I still love what I do.
You talk about about government, but I read somewhere that only about 10% of Americans under 30 even know what the Zadroga Act is. Now, that's not apathy, it's design. What have you learned about the system's willingness or unwillingness to protect its heroes once the headlines fade?
Well, thank you for pointing that out. We know that in the World Trade, there are about 140,000 people in the World Trade Center Health Program. 85% of the cops and firefighters know about the program and have enrolled because their unions have done such a good job. But the lawyers don't have a union. The people at the stock exchange don't have a union. The former students and teachers, well, the teachers have a union, but the students don't. So these people have dispersed all over the country. This is no longer a New York issue. This is a national issue, which is why next week I'm going to Florida to speak to this group of presidents of different retiree clubs. Then I'm going to Raleigh, then Wilmington, then Myrtle Beach to speak at retiree clubs to let them know that we need them to call their mostly Republican senators and congressmen and let them know this is not just a New York issue. I'm a constituent here in South Carolina. I need you to support this health program. So that's the way I'm doing it. Because the government isn't doing outreach, private law firms like me and the unions, we're the only ones doing outreach now, and which is why I so appreciate you giving me a chance on your podcast to help spread the word to people that they may be eligible. Because while over 85% of the firefighters and cops have enrolled, less than 10% of civilians are enrolled. They either don't know that they're eligible, or they think, oh, wait a second, didn't that program end a long time ago? That cancers are still going on. They don't realize there's a presumption linking 69 cancers. So if they get cancer in 10 or 20 years from now, all they have to do is prove they were here. That's it.
Right.
So that's what I'm doing. I'm doing a lot of advocacy.
Well, you've been in the fight for decades now. Believe it or not, it's decades. I mean, we're now 25 years into it. Have you ever had moments when, you go home at night and you say, I'm burnt, man. I don't know if I could do this anymore?
No, not one day. I keep thinking there are so many people out there who still don't realize that they're eligible. I went to Staten Island the other night to speak at an American Legion hall, and it was all these retired sanitation workers. And it's like, I send out emails because I have the emails, but guys don't read their emails and they don't read newsletters. And so many guys I was speaking to still didn't know. Like, I'll say, sir, if you ever get skin cancer, prostate cancer, I had skin cancer. I'll say, well, but sir, I just said cancers are related. Oh, I didn't realize skin cancer was a cancer. Okay. So I signed up a dozen guys the other night. That brings me so much satisfaction, Neal, that to know that I'm helping people get the health care they deserve. Okay, $90,000 may not change someone's life, but let me tell you something. I get someone $600,000 for the loss of a spouse. That can help them keep a house, send their kids to college. That feels so good. So no, I don't get tired. I'm just always energized by who else can I reach.
Well, let me push back a little bit on that. In other words, I mean, you've seen thousands of cases, first responders, iron workers, school teachers, janitors. I mean, does it take some kind of toll on you to hear all of those? This is not just a car accident case. This is way more than that. I don't even want to say it in the same sentence. I feel foolish, but does it take a toll on you at some point? And how do you not let it take a toll on you? I know what you just said, but.
And by the way, that is the most common question I get asked by reporters. Because I told you, 2 of my clients die every day, but it's so gratifying to be able to help so many people. Look, when you and I represented people in car accidents, it felt great to make sure that you helped that one person. And when we tried that case, that one client was the most important client in the world. All right, now I have the responsibility of representing thousands of clients, but I also have 200 people who work here who are helping me. So It's not just me. And by the way, of the people who work here, I have 24 people who have lost a parent to a 9/11 illness. So we all take this so personally. We were here. I've lost people in my firm. I feel this calling because it's so personal. And I'm really so privileged to be able to do what I do, Neal. I never feel like this is taking a toll on me.
Wow.
I go home and I don't think about it until the phone rings. And then it's someone else who needs to talk to me. And I'm always, my kids and family know. And you know what the nicest thing is, Neal? My son, Rob, I don't know if you remember him. He was a little kid when you knew him. He just graduated from Miami Law School.
Wow.
Got a joint JD MBA.
Wow.
He's taken the bar this summer, and he's going to come work for me in September. I'm so excited about bringing him to events and having him learn what I do. So yeah, maybe I'll be able to take off some more time. But Congress extended these 2 programs till 2090. So I plan to work at least until 2090. And then I promise you, I will take a vacation.
You'll be out of the picture.
Yeah.
Speaking about all of these people that you represent, so I have a few questions, but first question is there a specific story that maybe didn't make the headline news that really touched you? I know they all touch you. I get it. But was there one in particular that moved you even more?
Yeah. A 27-year-old girl who at the time was 2 years old living in Battery Park.
Mm-hmm.
And she recently came down with stage 4 breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
That is a particular horror story that I just feel so heartbroken about. But the Victim Fund did the right thing, and they looked at what she went to college. She had a great, career ahead of her, which now doesn't look like she'll ever be able to work. But hopefully, they got it in enough time that she'll survive. They're not, she's still within the danger zone. But to know that I got her compensation that's going to be able to take care of her, that feels really good. But it really was so heartbreaking. I mean, there's a lot of that I feel so bad. I was speaking to someone yesterday, a widow. Her husband just died of cancer, leaving her with 4 young girls. That's heartbreaking. So there are so many like that after a while it does tend to blur. But at the time that I speak to any one person, I'm 100% talking to that person, and it feels great to help them, but it's also really sad.
Yes. And so how do all of you, how do you make sure that in your firm you have this culture amongst the lawyers and the legal assistants to try to maintain some kind of genuine relationship with these people? Because it's not easy. You're representing thousands of people. You don't talk to them every day. You can't possibly do that. But yet all of these people, I know this for a fact from people that have seen you, that they find you to be genuine, authentic. How do you manage to pull that off?
Because it's personal. I've lost people in the firm. I'm a cancer survivor. It's easy, Neal, when you are part of the community. I'm not some lawyer uptown or somebody advertising on television,
Right.
who wasn't part of this.
Right.
You and I were part of it.
Right.
And it's not as hard as you think if you're part of something.
And let me ask you this: how has, if at all, how has the digital world, because that wasn't around when we knew each other back in the old days, how has that affected your work at all?
So it makes it a lot easier to communicate with my clients. Communication is probably the most important thing, and managing expectations. So right now, with all these cuts in the budget, it takes a long time to get an appointment with the World Trade Center Health Program.
Right.
It takes a long time then to get certified so you can get an award from the Victim Compensation Fund. I've found that as long as you communicate with your clients and tell them, look, it's going to take longer than we thought because of these budget cuts, and everyone's aware of the budget cuts.
Right.
As long as you manage those expectations, and we use texting, email, social media, which, as you said, didn't exist when we were younger.
Right. Right.
That's a real helpful tool to help them understand. And then they're not mad at me, because usually who are clients mad at? They're mad at their own lawyers.
Right.
Because it's taking so long, whether it's a car accident, a construction accident.
Right.
They don't understand the judge just gave us another 4-month delay. Why? I'm waiting. I need the money. And in this case, it takes 8 months to get an appointment now with the health program. But people understand it as long as you talk to them.
So you started out I think we talked initially about trust and, not just handling legal claims, you're carrying people's trauma. So what is it can you give me a few specific things that you do to gain that trust and for that trust to continue for as long as it takes? And sometimes it takes a long time.
So we clearly we stay in touch with our clients. We let them see us fighting in Washington. I do so much outreach. I go out and speak to communities. I speak to retiree groups. And when they see me, when they have my cell phone, when they, see that I'm in Washington, they know I'm fighting for them. And that makes them trust me. That makes them accept the fact that it's taking longer than they would have liked. I think that's the biggest thing. And also them hearing that I'm a member of the community gives me incredible credibility right away. They know that I'm one of them. So I'm fighting for them. I'm fighting for the people in my firm who are sick. I'm fighting for their families. And, if somebody calls up in my office, a widow, and starts to say, you don't know what I'm going through. Someone in my office can say, ma'am, I know exactly what you're going through. I lost my dad to a 9/11 cancer. And that's incredibly powerful, Neal. So I think I've been very fortunate in putting together a group here that is mission driven. Everybody who comes to work for me, and we did a survey of my clients, recently and of my staff. What do you like? What could we be doing better? Because
Right.
I'm always looking to try to do better.
Right. Sure.
And it was the people love our mission. They love the fact that they're helping people. And I'm so lucky to be able to get people to work here who feel that way.
Wow. And has your continued effort with Congress, especially at a time when we are so polarized, how is that? I mean, are you jaded by that? Do you walk into a senator's office and you got a chip on your shoulder? I mean, how do you approach lobbying today? And you weren't born a lobbyist. You didn't work as a lobbyist when you were younger. How do you deal with that day in and day out?
So I'm very fortunate. I work with the Feel Good Foundation and the UFA and the UFOA. So they call and they make the appointments. And, Senator and congressmen are pretty willing to talk to the New York City firefighter unions. And then we show up with several retirees and we try to make these young staffers who, in often cases, they don't even know about 9/11 or they've heard of it like you and I heard about Pearl Harbor. But we explain to them that this is not a New York issue. This is an issue that affects, and I know how many people in each state has constituents who are in the World Trade Center program because they're in all 50 states. And we explain it to them. And then we slowly ask them, would you be willing to be a co-sponsor of this legislation to fully fund the health program? Of course, it's not instant, but in most cases, it's, my boss is totally in favor of the military. My boss loves the firefighters. I mean, we really sell this, not by saying, we have all these people from Goldman Sachs,
Right.
but rather firefighters came from all over the country to help out after 9/11. So it's a bipartisan issue. It isn't polarizing at all.
Can you just briefly talk about your very well-known predatory lending lawsuit?
Oh, yeah, I represented this cop. He wasn't even my client, actually, but he called me up asking me for advice because one of my clients said that didn't sound right. He was promised an award. He won $950,000 from the victim fund, but his lawyer only sent him 10% and said, didn't you hear about the government cuts? That's all you're getting. Now, there were government cuts back in 2015, but then they were restored. The lawyer just never bothered to tell him. And the lawyer, by the way, happened to have been a retired cop who just stole the money from this guy.
Right.
So I decided to represent him pro bono. I was so outraged. We brought an action against this cop. We reported him to the disciplinary committee. He got disbarred, arrested. He's still in jail today. I mean, I was able to get $400,000 for the client from the lawyers fund that helps people who have been robbed by lawyers. Doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen sometimes. So he ended up with $400,000 from the lawyers fund, and then he did get the original 10%, $90,000. That was the best we could do. And this guy who's rotting in jail, hopefully he's getting what he deserves in jail.
I'm thrilled that you're creating a culture of impact and not ego, which is typical. Ego is more typical of lawyers. So you once again are an outlier. And as we wind up, I have 3 quick questions, and you can give me 3 quick answers. And we ask all our guests this. So what's the one thing that you would tell a young lawyer right now who's listening to this, what they can do to be that one lawyer?
Be friendly and talk to everybody. You never know who's going to lead. A relationship is going to lead to something else. Join clubs. Be social.
That's great. I love it. And if you can go back to talk to your younger self, knowing what you know now, what would you say?
Study a little bit more in law school. All the stuff I didn't learn, some of it could have helped me out.
Right.
If you're going to do something, commit to it 100%.
And finally, is there someone that you've lost personally or professionally who you want one more conversation with? What would you say to them if you had that moment?
I'd say, Dad, thank you for making me go to law school.
Great. Well, Michael, thank you. How can people get in touch with you or your firm, whether it's a lawyer or somebody who needs your help?
Go to my website, 911victims.com. That's 911 victims with an S.com. There's so much information on there. There's a chat box that pops up. If you fill it in, I'll call you. I'd be happy to just talk to you about anything, okay?
And by the way, folks, he will call you. He will call you. He's that type of guy. He is an outlier, and I appreciate him, and I appreciate you, Michael, for coming on. It's been a great conversation, and thank you for all that you do.
Neal, thank you for following this. Anytime you want me, I'm happy to talk to you, buddy. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
If something here hits home for you, don't keep it to yourself. Tap subscribe, drop a comment, and share this with a lawyer who needs to really hear it. This is That One Lawyer Podcast. See you next time.